WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Military government in Niger to begin implementation of resolutions from the National Conference on March 25. Ivorian opposition leader Tijan renounces French nationality as his name appears on the electoral roll.
After the crisis that Côte d'Ivoire experienced in 1999, in 2010 and in 2020, I am worried when I see that we are heading towards an election that may not be inclusive.
Parliament in Nigeria approves emergency rule in Rivers State, calls for mediation, and Ghanaian government revokes small-scale mining licenses granted after December 7.
We are going full steam ahead to revoke all licenses based on the findings. All licenses, small-scale licenses that were issued from December 7th is hereby revoked.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is a more edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners across the sub-region. Let's begin in Niger, where authorities will begin the concrete implementation of the major recommendations from the National Refoundation Conference, including a 5-year transition and the adoption of a new constitutional charter. The launch, which will be heralded by a ceremony scheduled for the 25th of March, comes after several weeks of consultations and preparation. Augustine Coley has more details in this report.
This ceremony follows the official submission on March 10 of the final report of the National Refoundation Conference to General Abdurrahman Chiani, President of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, CNSP. Governors of all regions have been instructed to facilitate the participation of regional representatives in this important event. Among the main recommendations to be officially launched are the establishment of a 5-year transition period, the dissolution of existing political parties, and the adoption of a new charter adapted to the country's socio-cultural realities. The preliminary draft of the Refoundation Charter has constitutional value and repeals Ordinance Number 2023-02 of July 28, 2023. It establishes a 60-month refoundation period and is structured around 3 major axes: fundamental values and principles, the missions of the new institutions, and the structuring of the governance bodies. Under the conclusions of the National Conference, General Abdurrahman Chiani will assume the role of President of the Republic of Niger for the next 5 years. This decision confirms his central role in the country's governance for the entire duration of the refoundation period. The charter, which will constitute the country's new institutional framework, establishes new governance bodies, including the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, the Government of Refoundation, and the Consultative Council of Refoundation.
Augustine Coley filed that report. Now let's take you to Côte d'Ivoire, where we have a couple of stories. First, members of parliament from the PPACI parliamentary group, the party of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo, stormed out of a plenary session to protest against the electoral process leading to the organization of the presidential election in October 2025. Before the deliberations in plenary session, the parliamentary group of the PPACI set a prerequisite, deciding to leave the plenary session room due to the absence of Laurent Gbagbo's name on the provisional electoral list published on Monday, March 17. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
Hubert Welaye, the president of the parliamentary group of the PPACI, who justified the walkout, declared that they did not say at any point in time that Laurent Gbagbo's name could not be found on the electoral list, which would serve as the basis for the organization of the various elections this year. He noted that there is also the refusal of the Independent Electoral Commission to carry out the legal revision of the electoral list for the year 2025, recalling that the law requires a revision of the electoral list every year. The PPACI is demanding that Laurent Gbagbo's name be included on the electoral roll. Despite his removal from the electoral roll due to his conviction, the party has announced that the former Ivorian president, already inaugurated, remains the political party's candidate for this presidential election. Sentenced to 20 years in prison in the BCR robbery case during the 2010 to 2011 post-election crisis, Gbagbo was removed from the electoral register. Although he has benefited from a presidential pardon since August 2022, he is yet to be admitted to the electoral register. The president of the PPACI parliamentary group, Professor Hube Welaye, subsequently announced that this action was taken while awaiting the party's leadership to give other alternatives and directions.
Abdullah Hassan filed a report. Meanwhile, Tijan Cham, leader of the opposition Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCI, is no longer French. An official decree confirmed his renunciation of French nationality, a prerequisite for running in the elections. A decree signed Wednesday, March 19 by the French government and published Thursday, March 20, 2025 in the official journal confirms that he is released from his allegiance to France. The step enables him to be able to run in the presidential election on October 25. HRT's report.
In Côte d'Ivoire, the constitution requires candidates to be exclusively Ivorian and born to Ivorian parents. Tijan Thiam, born in 1962 in Abidjan, obtained French nationality in 1987 due to his academic studies in France. Although he voluntarily renounced this nationality, political debate has raged over an article in the Nationality Code dating from the 1960s, which stipulates that an Ivorian loses his nationality if he voluntarily acquires another. Thiam stated that the move aligns with Article 55 of the Ivorian Constitution, which requires presidential candidates to hold only Ivorian nationality.
After the crisis that Côte d'Ivoire experienced in 1999, in 2010 and in 2020, I am worried when I see that we are heading towards an election that may not be inclusive. As a Democrat, I think it's very important that all candidates representing a significant share of the Ivorian election should be able to stand. Our concern at the RHDP is not to know who will be chosen or who will be validated by these institutions.
Significative de l'élection ivoirienne puisse être candidat.
He reaffirmed his commitment to driving change and improving citizens' lives. As his party, the PDCI prepares to confirm its candidate for the 2025 election. Tijan Thiam's entourage denounces maneuvers aimed at preventing him from running. The issue of nationality has already been a sensitive topic in Côte d'Ivoire, notably when Alassane Ouattara was excluded from the 1995 and 2000 presidential elections due to suspicions about his Burkinabe origin.
Our concern is to consolidate our territorial roots so that whoever the validated candidates are and not those born at each election, we can beat them to the punch in the presidential election. To be honest, we are not at all interested in being left out of debate about the eligibility of this or that person.
Tijan Thiam is currently registered on the provisional electoral list published Monday, March 17. The final list, after reviewing appeals, will be published on June 20. In the meantime, the PDCI has yet to formalize his nomination at a political bureau meeting scheduled for April 5.
HRT filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We cross over now to Nigeria, where the parliament has approved the President Bola Tinubu's proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State, invoking its constitutional powers under the amended 1999 Constitution. The approval grants President Tinubu the authority to enforce emergency measures while mandating a review of the situation at any time but no later than 6 months. Per the Constitution, the National Assembly has also imposed a joint committee of both chambers to oversee the administration of affairs in River State during the emergency period. Additionally, the Senate has resolved to establish a mediation committee consisting of eminent Nigerians to help resolve the state's political crisis. Godswill Akpabio is the Senate president.
And the Senate resolves as follows. 1. The Senate revokes the powers conferred on it by Section 305, Subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, and approve the proclamation of state of emergency declared by Mr. President in Rivers State of Nigeria. The Senate further directs that the declaration of the state of emergency stated in the proclamation document and the mandate of the President to review and hereby mandates the President to review and even to terminate the state of emergency at any given time, but not later than 6 months. The Senate further resolved that Section 11, subsection 4 be invoked, providing the National Assembly the authority to set up a joint ad hoc committee of both chambers to oversight the administration of Rivers State henceforth.
Godswill Akpabio is the Senate President. Just like the Senate, the House of Representatives had earlier approved Tinubu's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers. In a voice vote, the lawmaker backed Tinubu's decision 2 days after President Tinubu made the move. 240 House of Representative members attended the preliminary, which was presided over by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas. Now, in an update on a multiple vehicle accident which occurred at Karo Bridge in Nigeria's capital Abuja on Wednesday evening, as at this afternoon, the death toll has risen to 8. According to police sources, the incident occurred at approximately 6:58 p.m. when a Dangote truck loaded with cement suffered brake failure while traveling through AYA to Nyanya. The truck lost control and rammed into stationary vehicles trapped in traffic, igniting a massive fire. Eyewitnesses reported explosions at the scene with fireballs and debris propelled hundreds of meters into the air. Some projectiles landed nearly a kilometer away, causing panic among commuters and residents. An officer of the emergency unit of FRC gave the update.
6 people were taken out here yesterday, and this morning in the hospital 2 people have died, making total 8. Custom Hospital we have 10 people, Karo Hospital we have 8 people, National Hospital we have 11, and the Aswo Clinic we have 1. 6 were taken out from here yesterday, and this morning 2 died in the hospital, making 8.
Away from Nigeria now, let's discuss the suspension of Voice of America, the oldest international broadcaster since last Saturday. The decision made by U.S. President Donald Trump impacts over 1,300 employees. As a result, several VOA programs have been halted, depriving millions of listeners and viewers across 47 languages of their source of information. Reporters Without Borders, RSF, the organization advocating for press freedom, has condemned Donald Trump's decision. Sadibo Marong, RSF's representative for West and Central Africa, spoke to WDL's Demba Ma'an, where he strongly denounces the closure of Voice of America since Saturday.
We fundamentally believe that Trump's administration's decision to put all Voice of America personnel on a kind of administrative leave is must be considered as the latest abandonment of the United States' historic role in championing press freedom in the world. As you might know, VOA has played a historic role near the U.S. also as a defender of free information. And all these has been beneficial to the world and beyond the world, to Africa also, and from where, for example, you might see a lot of journalists from Africa working for VOA, finding stories every day, finding radio stories for a TV or even online stories for VOA, using nearly 45 languages, a lot of languages in the world. And yes, this is extremely problematical, and we are expressing our deep concern over this decision from the Trump administration, and which really gonna threaten the press freedom. And yes, as I said, American history in supporting a free flow of information. We are standing in solidarity with our colleagues, journalists from VOA at large, including those who are from Africa. And we know either it is from DC, Washington, DC, or in any kind of any cities in Africa, there have been tremendously journalists from VOA, as a correspondent or journalist, doing a very important work.
That was Sandibo Marong, RSF's representative for West and Central Africa, speaking with Demba Ama'an. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Military government in Niger to begin implementation of resolutions from the National Conference on March 25. Ivorian opposition leader Tidjane Thiam renounces French nationality as his name appears on the electoral roll. Parliament in Nigeria approves emergency rule in Rivers State, calls for mediation. And still ahead of the news, Ghanaian government revokes small-scale mining licenses granted after December 7. We do have a guest interview and the latest in the sporting world. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org, YouTube and Facebook. Here in Senegal, no fewer than 400 intending migrants were arrested by the gendarmerie. Of this number, 59, including 16 girls, were arrested in the village of Mbojene, while an initial 374 individuals were intercepted between Mbo and Fatick during the weekend of March 14 to 16, 2025. The gendarmerie, in a statement, noted that those arrested were mainly from the Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and a majority from Guinea. Similarly, 7 members of a smuggling network were arrested and significant logistical resources were seized. These waves of arrests followed increased patrol and surveillance along the coast by joint security operatives to tackle the trend of irregular migration which has rocked the country and claimed many lives in recent times. A group of NGOs in Senegal described the latest arrest as alarming and expressed deep concern about the resurgence of irregular migration. They, however, blamed the migration crisis on the lack of economic opportunities, insecurity, and the absence of viable prospects for young people. In a significant move to tackle illegal mining, Ghana's government has announced the revocation of all small-scale mining licenses issued after December 7, 2024. This decision follows the presentation of the comprehensive report by the Technical Committee jointly established by the Minister of Land and Natural Resources and the Minister of Environment, Science and Technology weeks ago to review the current small-scale license regime and propose recommendations on the menace. Addressing the press, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, assured the public that the government will focus on the committee's recommendations.
We are going full steam ahead to revoke all licenses based on the findings. All licenses, small-scale licenses that were issued from December 7th is hereby revoked. Whether you have EPA licenses, because the finding is very clear. Those licenses from December 7th were rushed, the due processes were not followed, and the right things were not done. I'm proud to inform you that we announced at the beginning, when I took office, I went to Parliament and announced that 9 of our forest reserves were completely taken over by thugs who are destroying our forest. I'm proud to tell you, with the cooperation of the security agencies, the military, we have taken back 7 of these 9 forest reserves. We are working very hard to make sure that the other 2 is completely also. So we are close to taking over our forest reserve. We are working day and night, thanks to the support of the Ghana Armed Forces and the Defense Ministry. The committee is to audit all licenses to ensure that they are properly acquired, that due process was followed, that they meet all conditions of continuous validity with respect to the environmental, with respect to how they have followed the rules on environmental, and then how they have dealt with the issues of our water bodies.
Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa is the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources in Ghana. Now, the ECOWAS Commission has reaffirmed its commitment to gender equality and human development at the general debate of the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 69, at the United States headquarters in New York. Speaking on behalf of ECOWAS, Professor Fatou Sow Sarr, Commissioner for Human Development and Social Affairs, highlighted the progress made by the region in promoting women's rights and social inclusion since the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action. She declared that since Beijing, there have been major advances in girls' education, health, and the fight against gender-based violence. Professor Sarr highlighted several key initiatives aimed at improving the living conditions of women in West Africa. Among them, the establishment of manufacturing units for reusable sanitary towels aimed at young girls and women in vulnerable situations. She noted that another flagship program is the Women, Peace and Security Initiative, which documents the situation of women in conflict zones and facilitates their involvement in peace processes. Former Liberian head of state Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has departed the country to represent President Joseph Boakai and the country at Namibia's inauguration slated for March 21, 2025. As a special envoy of President Boakai, Sirleaf will also campaign for Liberia's bid for a non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council scheduled to take place in June of this year in New York. Sirleaf is accompanied by Liberia's Ambassador at Large Charles Snetter and Joyce Menschel to attend the inaugurations of Netumbo Nandi Ndatwa. Ndatwa is also set to become Namibia's first female elected president. Liberia's Deputy Information Minister for Public Affairs Daniel Sando made a disclosure Thursday in the Liberian capital Monrovia.
She will not only represent President Joseph Boakai at the country's inauguration for the president-elect, but she will also lead the campaign for Liberia's bid for the non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. President Sirleaf, as President Boakai's special envoy, is a strategic move to strengthen Liberia's international standing ahead of the UN vote in June, while attending the swearing-in of Namibia's elected female president on March 21st. Former President Sirleaf is expected to engage the regional and global leaders to rally support for Liberia's candidacy. Accompanying the former president on the trip are Liberia's Ambassador at Large, Ambassador Charles Snetter, George Mesco, and other officials. The visit also marks an important moment in Africa politics. And Nandi Ndatwa, 72, prepares to become Namibia's elected female president to lead an African nation. The other day, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs invited former leaders to do 1-minute video voicing out their support for Liberia's bid for this non-permanent seat. Of course, we have reiterated the importance and the vibrancy that this election will bring to Liberia. And so President Sirleaf is a patriotic citizen, the former leader of our country. She accepted our call and she's acting in the direction of the government to ensure that we can get this seat.
That was Daniel Sando, Liberia's Deputy Information Minister for Public Affairs.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
The consortium of civil society organizations in the Gambia are calling for the reinstatement of Clause 14 in the Election Bill 2021, which is currently tabled before the Parliament. This comes after members of the National Assembly deleted the said clause, citing it's not in conformity with the 1997 Constitution. Our guest is Mar Nyang, the Executive Director of Gambia, participates. Nyang, who is also the lead campaigner for the reinstatement of the Clause 14 in Election Bill 2021, speaks with WDR about the essence of this campaign.
To give you a quick background, our current laws provide the legal framework for those Gambians living in the diaspora, be Senegal, Africa here, Europe, or Americas, Asia, for them to vote in public elections. That is affirmed by Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution, which says that eligible Gambians will be registered and vote in elections. The Supreme Court also stated that Gambians, including those in the diaspora, should be registered and vote in all elections. Now, the Elections Act, which is currently being reviewed and amended through this Elections Bill, where you have the Clause 14, the current Election Act, Section 141, clearly mentioned that the election managing body, IEC, should draw rules for the Gambians living in the diaspora to vote in presidential elections only. Now, you go earlier to the clauses of that same law, which is Section 12, mention that for one to be qualified to be registered, you must be a Gambian, and you have to reside or you must be born in a particular constituency. So now, the argument that parliamentarians are giving is that the diaspora do not have a constituency, And if they maintain that clause 14 in the elections bill, that is going to be unconstitutional and is going to be incompatible with the 1997 Constitution. So we are telling them that is actually not the case. The diaspora in presidential election and referendum, they don't need to have a constituency because in these two elections, the country is treated as one constituency.
Countries with greater resources like Nigeria and Ghana are not implementing diaspora voting. How do you think the Gambia can be cognizant of the logistical nightmare ensuring diaspora voting?
First, to address the issue of logistical nightmare, elections around the world are logistical nightmare. It is not a good excuse for one to use that as a yardstick to
All right, it's time for sport, and we understand that Sierra Leone has dealt a big blow to Guinea-Bissau in the qualifiers. Well, Sankli Jankli is here. Sankli, welcome. And what are the other upsets that we are seeing in the qualifiers?
Hopefully we will not see an upset when Gabon, of course, take on Seychelles later on. But like you rightly said, Sierra Leone, edged Guinea-Bissau in the All West African Derby after a 3-1 victory. Interesting match. But we've also seen another upset because Benin were held to a 2-2 draw against Zimbabwe, and this is very good for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. It's a good result for them.
Say that again.
Namibia were 1-0 winners away to Malawi. Cape Verde also defeated Mauritius 1-0, and Mozambique 3-1 winners against Uganda. Very interesting, results there.
Well, we're going to be seeing our man, former Senegalese coach, Aliou in action, and I know that a lot of Senegalese will want to watch that match. Maudo was even asking, what about Aliou? What's going to be happening exactly?
Yes,
he's going to be leading the team out this evening.
Absolutely. This evening, Aliou Cisse will, lead Libya for the first time as the head coach of the Libyan football national football team, and they will take on Angola. It's a very, very tough one, I must say. But let's see how that pans out. Gabon will also take on Seychelles. Comoros will entertain Mali later on in the evening. That also promises to be a very, very interesting one. And of course, the Gambia will take on Kenya also tonight.
Very
Gambia. I'm really looking forward to, Aliou Cisse's first game as Libyan coach.
No, I am looking forward to it, and not just the fact that we have an advantage now with Benin drawing with.
You're already excited.
Yes, I really want to see how that game will turn out with Rwanda tomorrow. But anyway, Sankle, thank you for sports news. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mado Juf and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WDR News. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship environment program, Enviroscope with Abdullah Hassan. I am Imo Edit. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0.